Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett, and coming up, the latest on stories developing around the world. COVID-19 is spiking across swathes of Europe. A series of EU countries announced measures for the unvaccinated. Germany considers tougher curbs on the unvaccinated, but there is a political row as infections surge to record highs. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson admits he made a mistake in handling a sleaze scandal. UK lawmakers have backed plans to toughen rules on second jobs, although the opposition say measures are watered down from their proposals. The Philippines warns China to back off in the disputed South China Sea, accusing Chinese vessels of firing water cannons at its boats. Sudan witnesses its bloodiest day since the military takeover, as fire from security forces kills at least 15 anti-coup protesters. Thousands took to the streets to demonstrate against military rule. Garbine Muguruza beats Annette Kontaveit in straight sets to win the WTA finals in Mexico. Muguruza is the first Spaniard to win the season finale and will end the year as world number 3. And we will start with the COVID-19 situation, which is worsening in large parts of Europe. Cases, deaths and hospitalizations are rising in a number of European countries, with vaccine hesitancy and the lifting of restrictions thought to be contributing. Let's begin with Germany. Chancellor Angela Merkel has warned citizens and is calling for an extra push on vaccinations. Federal and local leaders are meeting to discuss measures to curb a fourth wave of the virus.
Die gegenwärtige Pandemielage in Deutschland ist dramatisch, ich kann es nicht anders sagen. Die vierte Welle trifft unser Land mit voller Wucht. Wir müssen dringend beim Impfen vorankommen. Und deshalb möchte ich auch diese Gelegenheit nutzen, um für das Impfen zu werben. Es ist auch jetzt überhaupt nicht zu spät, sich für eine Erstimpfung zu entscheiden. Denn jeder, der sich impfen lässt, schützt sich selbst und andere. Und wenn sich genügend Menschen impfen lassen, ist das der Weg heraus aus der Pandemie.
Germany reported close to 65,000 COVID-19 infections on Thursday alone, smashing the previous daily record. Angela Merkel is appealing to federal and regional leaders to introduce tougher restrictions. Rules could include mandatory proof of vaccination or negative COVID-19 tests on public transport and at work. Tighter restrictions are also likely to be imposed on leisure activities. Financial aid for companies and individuals hit by the COVID crisis are likely to be extended by 3 months until March 2022. Angela Merkel is also appealing directly to those who are sceptical about vaccines to change their minds. Only 68% of people in Germany have been fully vaccinated. Only 5% of the population has had booster shots. Belgium has also tightened COVID-19 restrictions, making it mandatory for people to wear masks and enforcing work from home for many. People will have to wear a mask in indoor venues.
Alors qu'il y a une déception et une frustration, je le comprends très bien. Nous avons tous espéré que l'automne aurait été plus léger et qu'on aurait eu un hiver sans corona. Et je sais que de nombreuses personnes sont fatiguées, et en particulier les personnes qui travaillent dans les soins, qui sont de nouveau submergées par la pandémie.
To Austria next, where people are queuing up to get vaccinated against COVID-19. The country has one of the lowest vaccination rates in Western Europe. And we are several days now into a lockdown on nearly 2 million people who are not fully vaccinated. In the Netherlands, Dutch health authorities say they are running short on COVID-19 tests. The country registered more than 20,000 new COVID-19 cases for the second day in a row. That is the highest number of daily cases for the country since the beginning of the pandemic. Hospital admissions are also on the rise. Earlier this month, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte's government reimposed a partial lockdown. The World Health Organization says COVID-19 deaths in Europe rose by 5% in the last week. That makes the continent the only region in the world where COVID-19 deaths have increased over that period. COVID deaths in other parts of the world remain stable or even declining, according to the latest data. Out of 3.3 million new infections reported, 2.1 million of them came from Europe. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has admitted he made a mistake in his handling of a sleaze scandal. He's faced fiery question sessions from lawmakers in Westminster. One, a quizzing of 2 hours by the House of Commons Liaison Committee. A major focus there was the case of Owen Paterson, the former Conservative MP found to have been involved in paid lobbying. Boris Johnson says his initial attempts to defend Mr. Paterson were an error.
Scope for cross-party. I think it was a very sad case, but I think there's no question that he had fallen foul of the rules on paid advocacy as far as I could see from the report. I think it was a very sad case, but I think there's no question that he had fallen foul of the rules on paid advocacy as far as I could see from the report. I think the question that people wanted to establish was whether or not, given the particularly tragic circumstances, he'd had a fair right to appeal.
And he had an appeal. His appeal was heard endlessly, both by the committee.
Yes, Mr. Brown, I wish to restate that informing the impression that the former member for North Shropshire had not had a fair process, I may well have been mistaken. But that was certainly the impression that many people seem to have.
Do you recognise that, given your responsibility to uphold the ministerial code, to uphold the rules, to uphold the standards, it's really important that you should not give any impression that when there is an independent report that found on 14 occasions of paid lobbying, that somehow you think that's okay? Can you clarify? You don't think it's okay, and you don't think that what Owen Paterson did was right?
Of course I don't, and that was the first thing I said when I began on this subject 2 weeks ago. Okay, and frankly, I think I think it is extraordinary that colleagues sometimes do behave in this way, and it is quite right that the Commissioner is able to investigate and to hold them to account. I've always sought to do, and I think the committee will agree that I've accepted that it was a mistake and that it was my mistake. All we wanted to do was to see whether, in view of the particular and frankly tragic circumstances of the case, there was any scope for cross-party agreement on an appeals process. That was all we were trying to do.
Well, if anything, those exchanges were relaxed compared to earlier back and forth between Boris Johnson and Labour leader Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's questions. Speaker Lindsay Hoyle involved as well.
I don't want to fall out about it. I've made it very clear. It is Prime Minister's questions. It's not for the opposition to answer your question. Whether we like it or not, those are the rules of the game that we're all into, and we play by the rules, don't we? And we respect this House, so let's respect the House. Prime Minister, sit down. Prime Minister, I'm not going to be challenged. You may be the Prime Minister of this country, but in this House, I'm in charge, and we're going to carry on.
Mr. Speaker, when somebody in my party misbehaves, I kick them out. When somebody in his party misbehaves, he tries to get them off the hook. I lead, he covers up. Let's try another issue. We know that Owen Paterson was a paid lobbyist for Randox. We know that he sat in on a call between Randox and the minister responsible for handling health contracts. We know that Randox has been awarded government contracts worth almost £600 million without competition or tender. Against that backdrop, the public are concerned that taxpayers' money may have been influenced by paid lobbying. There's only one way to get to the bottom of this: a full, transparent investigation.
Well, last month, Conservative MPs initially voted to halt a proposed 30-day suspension of Owen Paterson, and that was with Downing Street's backing. Details of other MPs' high-paying second jobs have been in the spotlight since. In particular, former Attorney General Geoffrey Cox, who's earned millions of pounds for legal work in recent years and spent several periods working abroad on non-parliamentary business. On Wednesday, British MPs backed moves to curb their ability to take second jobs, although the opposition claims the Johnson government has watered down its proposals. For more, let's go to WION correspondent Benji Hire, who is joining us live from London. And Benji, MPs did pass a government amendment to proposals from the opposition Labour Party. What happens next?
Well, straightforwardly, Ollie, these new rules are not settled for another 10 weeks or so, and so this argument will be taken into next year because the committee in charge of all this needs to assess it and then introduce those rules. And then, you heard just before, the Labour Party's leader, Keir Starmer, still objecting to the fact that a lot of this is not going far enough, and therefore you'd expect this sort of back and forth to go on for a couple more weeks. In essence, the argument isn't over, it might just be beginning, not least from the Labour benches but also from the Conservatives' own benches, with opposition from within Boris Johnson's own party. In terms of these specifics as well, again, more clarity needed as to specifically which jobs will fall under this new definition of sort of political consulting. There's been some reporters who have kind of dug into this and found out that these new rules might only cover about 10 MPs in the House of Commons, compared with the 48 who have second jobs as consultants. The reality for Boris Johnson is that there is going to be a difficult autumn and winter ahead. Aside from this sort of crisis, he's got to face a potential rise in COVID-19 cases, economic woes too, rising inflation, potential tax rises, potential interest rate rises. And what he needs, what he doesn't need, I should say, is more division in the House of Commons within his own party on matters like this. So it is a priority for the Boris Johnson government to try to heal those divides and put an end to this matter rather than to see it drag on through until the start of 2022.
Well, Boris Johnson is also under fire from some of his own MPs today over trains. Can we yet say that his leadership is going off the rails?
Yeah, he is under pressure, Ollie, and I think that it's worth setting out just very briefly what all this means. Essentially, it's a controversial discussion around a new high-speed rail route that's linking London to the north of England. It was proposed many years ago. It's costing a lot of money. It's kind of delayed significantly as well, and there's significant opposition to it. But construction has begun, and the first leg from London up to the Midlands is already being built. Then there's supposed to be second legs kind of parting from the Midlands up to the rest of the UK. It's fundamental to the government's levelling up agenda, which is all about giving infrastructure opportunities to the north of England. The problem for those that were in favour of this HS2 project is that part of that second leg up to a city in the north of England called Leeds is being scrapped. It was recently announced by the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps, and that's being instead replaced, ministers claim, by projects which are going to be more beneficial to the local area and can be implemented sooner. Again, however, what we find is that what the government has said, previously elected MPs from that region of the UK who say, you promised this, you promised that we'd have a new high-speed rail route delivered in the next couple of decades, and that's not actually what you are delivering for that part of the country. And so increased pressure on the government on those issues as well.
OK, Benji, thank you. Benji Hire reporting live from London. Next, we go to New Delhi. A thick layer of smog envelops India's national capital. For days, pollution levels have remained between severe and hazardous. More children are in hospital with breathing problems as pollution levels remain dangerously high. The government's shut 5 power stations and extended school closures.
India temporarily shut 5 coal-fired power plants on Wednesday to try to combat the chronic winter smog that has enveloped New Delhi. It's threatening the lives of residents. Paediatricians at this hospital in one of the world's most polluted capitals are seeing an alarming increase in children with allergies, wheezing, respiratory and breathing issues, and say the yearly smog poses a danger to their medium and long-term growth, both physical and cognitive. This is Dr. Arvind Buntra of the Max Super Speciality Hospital.
So, it's hit them really bad. So the number of patients that we are getting now because of respiratory infections, both in the OPD or in the emergency, there has been a 3- to 4-fold rise in their number of visits to the hospital. This is directly linked to the high levels of pollution that the city of Delhi and NCR is witnessing in the last 7 to 10 days.
The order to temporarily shut the power stations came from a panel of the Federal Environment Ministry, which also extended the closure of schools until further notice. Deadly pollution hits New Delhi every year, as falling temperatures trap deadly pollutants from the power stations outside it, along with fumes and burning garbage. Levels surged to severe this month, with New Delhi's Air Quality Index, which measures fine particles that can get lodged in the lungs, reaching 499 on a scale of 500, indicating healthy people were also at risk of developing respiratory illnesses. Anything above 60 is considered unhealthy.
Tensions between the Philippines and China have risen again over Beijing's claims to the South China Sea. The Philippines accuses Chinese Coast Guard vessels of firing water cannons at boats that were delivering supplies to Filipino military personnel in the region. Specifically, the 2nd Thomas Shoal, which belongs to the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. Ordering Beijing to back off, Foreign Secretary Teodoro Locsin said he had expressed outrage, condemnation and protest over the incident. He says that while no one was hurt, the Filipino boats had to abandon their mission. Tensions over the South China Sea grew earlier this year after hundreds of Chinese vessels were detected at Whitsun Reef. China claims almost all of the South China Sea, through which trillions of dollars in trade pass every year. There are competing claims in the region from Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan and Vietnam. In 2016, an international tribunal decided China's historical claim over most of the sea was without any basis. The contested waters have valuable fishing grounds and are believed to be sitting atop vast oil and gas deposits. Britain's Queen Elizabeth has resumed official engagements. The 95-year-old monarch missed a Remembrance Sunday service after what Buckingham Palace said was a back sprain. She had already cancelled a series of engagements due to an unspecified ailment and doctor's orders to rest. On Wednesday, she met the outgoing Chief of the Defence Staff, Nick Carter, at Windsor Castle.
The Chief of Defence Staff, Your Majesty. Your Majesty.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hello. Good to see you.
Well, it's rather sad.
It is. I know, 8 years as a Chief of Staff. It is a long time.
In fact, the only person who's done longer, I'm told, is Lord Mountbatten.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
So I'm quite surprised by that. Good morning, Your Majesty. Good night.
London's Victoria and Albert Museum's new exhibition is celebrating the work of Carl Fabergé. The exhibition shows a wide variety of artefacts from tiaras to animal figurines and cigarette boxes. And the last room has 15 bejewelled Fabergé eggs.
Easter time is already here at the Victoria and Albert Museum, even before Christmas. The largest collection of Fabergé Easter eggs in 25 years goes on display at the museum this weekend. Russian artist Carl Fabergé is famous for the bejewelled eggs that he made for the Romanov imperial family in the 1900s. He owned the largest jewellery company in Russia at that time.
When you look at a lot of the Fabergé items, you think of things that are very sparkly and shiny and beautiful. Well, this obsidian rhinoceros is a lot more subtle, so you can really see the musculature and the details. It allows you to admire the craftsmanship without being blinded by the beauty of the object.
The Fabergé eggs arouse internet across the world. Those include the royal families of Britain and Sweden, and those with past links to the nobility in Germany and Italy. Rich Jewish families such as the Rothschilds are also included in the list of patrons.
Well, this display case here really encapsulates the central narrative of the exhibition. It's how an international goldsmith, Fabergé, came to London and then began to immortalise Britain and particularly London in his works. So here, right in the centre, we have Fabergé painting an enamel scene of the Houses of Parliament, the absolute iconic London landmark. But it's mounted in Siberian jade, so it's a fusion of Russia, but it's Russia looking towards England and creating, immortalising the British world.
The eggs now have a wider popular appeal. The exhibition, Fabergé in London, Romance to Revolution, explores the links between Russia and Britain. The common factor being Carl Fabergé.
I think there were great similarities between Britain and Russia at this time, but there was also a thriving cultural dynamic in Edwardian London. And so if you were a great craftsman, a great artist, a creator of awe and wonder, London was the place you would come to meet the patrons who would fulfill your needs.
The Fabergé exhibition showcases a variety of things. From jewellery of Grand Duchess Alexandra to rare times like the monochrome rhino made up of volcanic glass. The exhibition will run until May next year. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
The Royal Botanical Gardens in southwest London have been illuminated with festive lights. Christmas at Kew returns for its 9th edition with old and new installations, so people can enjoy traditional rides and festive treats this holiday season. We will leave you with those pictures. Thanks very much as ever for watching.
Oh, sorry, it's a photo.
Well, we're very much sold out. There's a few tickets left in January. Last year we were lucky. We were stop-start, let's face it. We managed 20 nights out of a 40-night run. And as I say, very stop-start and very, obviously following guidance and adapting and changing along with that. But this year we went on sale in June. We have, as I say, really nearly sold out with some dates in January. So we're really just so excited to have the public back here with us and to, fingers crossed, get a lovely full run this year.